And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore, where we never sit out. We're your hosts, MD and CD. What is going on today? Today, we are talking about most and least improved teams candidates for 2024. And what does that mean? Let's define that, And before I define that, I'm gonna encourage the viewers, if you like the content, like the video, right? It's a rule we have around here. It's pretty simple. All you gotta do is click that little button, watch it turn blue, have yourself a day. And consider subscribing to us as well if you happen to like this content or want to see more of it in the future. I think we're getting better at this thing. Inch by inch, it's a cinch.
Inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yeah, like Matthew said, welcome to the video. Like and subscribe, obviously. Yeah, I encourage you real quick, consider who you are thinking about. Most improved teams automatically. First teams you go through. Let us know in the comments. We'll see if we match up in a line as well. But yeah, like Matthew said, defining most improved teams is going to be win totals, right? Or how you did last year, how many regular season wins you had last year versus how many that we're looking into our crystal ball, right? Steve Wiltfong, who's now with On3 now, by the
Oh,
way, which is
unbelievable. I,
crazy.
I I thought it was April Fool's prank. I
Me
legitimately
too.
thought it was April Fool's. We're recording this April Fool's. I mean, if you're a college football fan, you obviously know like what kind of shakeup that's done. I mean, in the recruiting industry, that is
Good for on
nuts.
three. Anyways, we're looking
Yeah.
to our we're looking through our redshirt sophomore crystal ball, and we're gonna see who we think has a chance with their schedule dynamics, with the returning production, and just things that line up to make a team, succeed and hit a window. And obviously, big bump from last year to this year.
Absolutely. You're probably thinking right off the bat, you're like, Ole Miss, did they added so much? Yes, they did, and they will be better. They will be an improved team, obviously, but we're just talking about wins. They won 10 games last year, and their over win
Yep.
total is 10 and a half. So we are sure they could go over that 10 and a half, absolutely. But like, we're looking for some bigger, more vast, larger improvements.
At least
And then
two
we're gonna
wins is our
and then we're
goal
gonna look at
here.
some teams that might have drop off, might have a drop off, according to Vegas. And we're not going to declare that these are going to go over or under these win totals. That is way too soon. If you are betting on over under win totals here on April 1st, get help. There is a number, 1-800 Gambler. Use it. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Now, it's not too early for Heisman's. Not just kidding. Do not bet on Heisman's unless you want to. That stuff is kind of fun, but also it's a donation. So make sure you're betting on your favorite book too. If you like a book, donate to them if
Yep.
you're going to bet on Heisman's. So, anyways, that was a tangent.
All right, let's get into this here. We're gonna go 2024 most improved teams, starting with Nebraska. A lot has been made of this offseason for Nebraska. Not only the highlight with Dylan Raiola coming in, but also some really nice pieces in the portal. Return that with some nice players coming back from just a year ago, and you got them top three in returning production and Bill Connolly's, and obviously the famous Matt Rule year two jump, which we've seen at Temple and Baylor and other places like not so much in the Panthers, right, in Carolina and the NFL, but this is college where Matt Rule thrives. And they won last year. To remind you, they went 5-7 and they blew away in November. They had a chance to go to the bowl game, maybe win a Big Ten West title, the last one ever. And they blew it thanks to some poor quarterback play and some injuries as well. And guess what? Henry Harmberg still there, right? The guy who played majority of the snaps there, but Jeff Sims is gone, and you insert Dylan Raiola, who a lot of people are penciling in to be the starter, to be the hero for them next year. A lot of expectations for him, but in our minds, they're over in total, right? 7.5 on Vegas, and we think there's a real chance that they meet that line with 7-8 wins, and obviously there'll be a huge jump from 2023 to 2024.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of their offense. If you want to talk about defense, they were a little bit underrated last year. I know the stats are skewed because they didn't play that many great elite offenses, okay? But consider this, okay? They finished 11th in the country in points per game allowed. They finished 6th in rushing yards per game allowed. They finished uh 8th in passing yards per attempt allowed, 4th in passing or yards per pass completed. So yeah, again, some of that was you played against Minnesota. You played against some of those teams in the Big West or the Big Ten West. But here's the thing, CD, I want you to guess how many. Now this is projected starters. This is going to absolutely shake up. We're talking about this in April. Okay, the starters is not set in these depth charts, but this is like projected stars. What I'm looking at right now, like how many of these starters on defense do you think have played at least 4 years of college football?
To me, it's got to be hopefully close to double digits there, 9 to 10.
Yeah, it's 10. 10 out of your 11.
Jeez.
That's pretty nuts. That's pretty nuts. And also, like, you have some depth there too, like um on the defensive line, but that defensive line depth is going to be young, you know. So we'll see where all that stuff comes from, but or where the production is going to come defensively. But I think you get an experienced defense and some explosive weapons on offense and a really good coaching staff. You could make some magic for Nebraska. You said they're over on a win total of 7.5. They won 5 games last year.
Yeah.
That's a
Just
2.5
they
win uh, improvement right there. If they win 8 games, that's a 3 game win improvement. That's pretty significant if you ask me. In just 1 year turnaround of Matt Rule tenure.
Yeah, you mentioned that defense. Tony White was a serious candidate for multiple head coaching jobs this offseason for good reason. What he did
Oh,
with that defense this year with a just uber limited offense. Yeah, like you mentioned, yes, that were they playing these high flying offenses? No, not necessarily. But you don't get a ton of these elite offenses on your schedule this year, anyways, right? Like last year, you kind of got exposed by Colorado early in the season. I get that. They were healthy, they were fired up, home game for them. It was wild. But this year you get obviously UTEP, Northern Illinois, Northern Iowa in the offseason, as well as welcoming back Colorado in the out of conference there. And then Illinois, right? Purdue, Rutgers, Indiana, UCLA, Iowa, even Wisconsin, you throw in there. USC's got a new quarterback system. So like there's a lot of teams there and quarterbacks that don't necessarily scare you, and or teams that are adjusting to new coaches or new coaching styles and whatnot. And obviously, Nebraska fans are no stranger to offseason hype, right? And an overwin total over a bowl game, and then just to have fail expectations. But why is this year different for you, Matthew? We've been skeptical of Nebraska in the past, right? We've been pretty skeptical of them, right? But what do you think different this year two, and Matt, really gives you confidence to put them on this list?
the offensive line.
Yep.
Is that crazy? I mean, like they weren't the best offensive line in the Big Ten by any stretch, but like there were games like teams knew that Nebraska was going to run the ball. They knew that Jeff Sims could not throw the ball, and yet they were moving bodies. They're moving bodies. It literally was only when they asked Jeff Sims to throw the ball that's the reason why they lost to Minnesota. You know, they didn't move the ball terribly on the ground. It was literally when Jeff Sims was asked to throw the ball that they lost the game. It's crazy. You know, Colorado, obviously, I mean, everyone kind of ran all over them, but I thought Nebraska was fine. I mean, they were 34th in rushing yards per game. They averaged 4.4 yards per attempt on runs. And they also ran the ball the seventh most, at the seventh highest clip of any other team in the NCAA. So like teams knew that they were going to run the ball, and they were still wildly successful. And also that's reflected, you know, uh, like their third down percentage was not great, but it would have been a lot worse. It would have been a lot worse. And I feel like with better quarterback play, you're going to see that third down percentage skyrocket. You're going to see that red zone percentage, which was terrible last year. You're going to see that skyrocket. If you can just get consistent runs on first and second down, which they did last year, and I mean, I'm saying half decent quarterback play, especially with these receivers.
Yeah, and obviously a lot was made if you're a Nebraska fan or tuned into recruiting and I guess Nebraska football. But Donovan Raiola, their offense line coach, right? You mentioned how good they got last year, and I think they're gonna be pretty damn good this year. He gets a huge raise in the offseason. And part of that, everyone's like, oh, he's just the uncle of Dylan Raiola, and that coincidence there. And maybe that's part of it, but he was a legit good offensive line coach for you last year. And what Matt Rule did is he built a pretty darn good staff in year one. And maybe you shake things up on the offensive side of the ball, right? But obviously defensively and O-line wise, you keep things pretty consistent, which is nice for you, to build on to year two. I'm gonna name a couple transfers for you that I really like. I'm gonna give you a throwback to Isaiah Nair, right? A couple years ago, he was the guy coming over from Wyoming to Texas, could never stay healthy, could never get on the field, and he was gonna be a major impact player for them. I am really excited to see what he can do this year, and hopefully another year removed from that big injury he suffered at Texas, and I think he could be a real playmaker. And Jamal Banks from Wake Forest was criminally underrated in the ACC there for a while now. Those two guys, combined with a couple of linemen, a couple of defensive players, that can do some real damage for Nebraska this year. What's an already pretty deep and well-constructed team with a ton of returning talent. You supplement a certain spots there with some playmakers that you maybe haven't had to complement a guy like Malachi Coleman, who we talked about before, and really get Dylan and I very comfortable in this offense in year one.
Yeah. And have we even talked about their schedule?
No, I
Which,
mentioned a little bit. I mentioned a little bit
but like
how they don't play a ton
this
of good quarterbacks, but
Is this the most manageable schedule in the Big Ten? One of them.
It's about as good as you could have had. Because to be honest, you're not going to beat Ohio State probably. So you have them on the road anyways, right? Rutgers a team that's people are improving. You get them at home. Wisconsin's improving. You get them at home. Obviously, you don't have to go to the other side of the country in UCLA. You get them at home. I think it's pretty darn manageable. And obviously, yeah, with Purdue and Illinois and Iowa supplemented in there, those are teams that you should absolutely beat in year one in Indiana. Absolutely should beat them. So I mean, I'm looking here, and 8 wins, 9 wins is yes. Is it high expectations for Nebraska football in recent history? Absolutely. But is it realistic to attain that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So look, heading over to our next team, we're gonna be talking about this year. Most improved teams, Texas Tech, coming in at 6-6 a year ago. We think they can improve that this year. A combination of returning talent, supplemented transfers. Obviously, we love that coaching staff and how they've recruited the high school ranks, Joey McGuire, especially in state there, but also a workable schedule in the Big 12. And their over under win total, according to Vegas, 8.5. All right. So Vegas, again, another team that they expect to win 2.5, 3 more games than they did just a year ago.
Yeah, I like the schedule, man. I like the schedule. When I look at this schedule, right, and we thought that Texas Tech could be a pretty good team last year, right? And they did battle injuries. What are you gonna do, right? What are you gonna do? And you probably could have beaten Oregon too. Probably should have beaten Oregon,
And
but you should
Wyoming.
have.
And Wyoming.
And Wyoming. So here's a team that literally could have had 2 more wins last year. Vegas is projecting that they get 2.5 more wins. Abilene Christian, Washington State, which we know is not the same Washington State team as it was last year. And last year they struggled down the stretch. North Texas, Arizona State, Cincinnati. Like you should start 5-0. And then you play Arizona at Arizona, right? And also we
Which
don't know what that's going to look like because Brent Brennan, that there's a lot of question marks there over at Arizona. And then you get a bye before you play Baylor and then TCU, right? And then you play Iowa State, who's going to be good next year. Who's going to be good. But like before you get to Iowa State, you could be 7-1 right
and by the
there
way,
off
that
the bat.
Arizona game, Arizona's coming off a trip to Salt Lake and playing Utah there, which
Yeah.
if there's a time to get Arizona this year, right, it's going to be after playing Utah, who nobody wants to play in the Big 12.
Yeah. And we'll see. I mean, Colorado, you get to play them at home. And then Oklahoma State, of course, you got to go to Boone Pickens, which is always tough, right? But we'll see. Oklahoma State's defense was pretty brutal last year, and you could catch them in certain times, hence UCF. And also West Virginia. Fortunately, you get that game at home, right? Like that is as manageable as it gets in the Big 12, if you ask me. That's as manageable as it gets. Now you do have that period of time where you play at TCU, at Iowa State, but like sure, back-to-back road games, like in the middle of the season, whatever. And then that's sandwiched in between Baylor and Colorado. So it's like to me, that's manageable. To me, that's manageable. So um, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, they are completely overhauling this offense, which at time last year went pretty stagnant. And yes, you were working in a young quarterback in Baron Morton after Tyler Shuck went down with an injury. But you obviously lose 2 guys who I was very high on just a year ago, and Jaron Bradley and Miles Price. They're off to other Power Five schools in the portal there. But you bring in some damn good talented guys, starting with one of our favorite transfers of the year, Josh Kelly. If you watch him from Washington State, you know he's a star. Him and Cam Ward, making Cam Ward look very, very good at times. And yes, we love Cam Ward. Yes, we do. But Josh Kelly was a star in a really good Pac-12 last year with some darn good cornerbacks as well. And then obviously Micah Hudson. Everybody knows the 5-star phenom from Texas getting in there to really obviously you take that next step of this program with Joey McGuire. And obviously some guys, you're bringing 4 line transfers and you're replacing Baylor Cup, obviously very talented tight end, but you got Mason Tharp, who showed some nice things a year ago. And I really think with another year of development under McGuire and staff there, that Baron Morton can really get after it while using Taj Brooks to your advantage and when you have him, because he is probably the best running back in the Big 10, the Big 12, and maybe one of the best in the country.
Yeah, and do you say Jalen Conyers too at tight end?
I did not.
Another very good athletic player, transferring in there at tight end. So, I mean, we'll see. Like the returning production, you talked about having returning production, and I think the returning production is coming uh from a lot of transfers. You know, like that's calculated in there, like it's snaps played, right? Defensively, you lose some leadership there for sure. Tyler Owens is for sure a standout that you lose in that locker room. But the reality is, I think Joey McGuire is a good coach, and I think this is a manageable schedule, and I think this is a talented enough team that can maybe put people on notice. I mean, Texas Tech, did they finish first in recruiting in the Big 12 this past year? I mean,
I believe so.
this could be a, a mainstay team, a team that is going to be consistently competing for Big 12 championships. Why can't they start this year? Why not? Why not Texas Tech?
Yeah, if there's one team we talked about the power vacuum that's going to be there in the Big 12. And obviously, Kansas State's been playing great football. Kansas is a very popular team. Utah's had success in the Pac 12. Arizona returns a ton of talent. But like you said, Texas Tech is the one that's recruiting just as good as anybody else and better than anybody else in the Big 12. And to me, that's going to carry over year to year. And now you get into year three of Joey McGuire, and you see more of those guys on campus, more of those guys that are Joey McGuire guys. Yes, you have transfers coming in all over the place, but you're also building depth through the recruiting through the high school ranks, and obviously so you can get through the schedule and a manageable schedule at that. But also injuries are going to come up; they're going to come up no matter what, and obviously you're going to be able to you have to be able to overcome them and really get after it. But how about this though? How about the Josh Kelly return to Washington State week 2,
I
September
know,
7th? He's going back to Pullman.
he might go nuclear. Not gonna lie. He might go
He
nuclear.
he might, but
He's I mean, like when I look at like I don't know. I was gonna say like offensive player of the year. There's so many candidates here in the Big 12, but like if you're looking for a super mega Mongo sleeper, like Josh Kelly might be staring right at you in the face.
especially if Morton takes that step, you believe he will. And obviously, they do like to throw the football. Obviously, Taj Brooks got his carries last year, but that's because of the reality of the situation was young quarterback, and obviously, uh, Taj Brooks was a monster, and you had
Yeah,
kind of
he was a
inconsistent
dog.
wide receiver core. But yeah, I think yeah,
And like
Josh
what
Kelly.
would have happened with Texas Tech? Like how many wins would they have? Like you asked this question with Oklahoma State if they had just run the ball sooner, you know? Now,
It probably be
listening to Joey McGuire press conferences, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, why didn't you run the ball sooner?" And he was like, "I mean, we are running the ball now because they're giving us looks, you know. So maybe that was something that just developed throughout the season based on the looks that they were getting. So sometimes things evolve like that. I'm sure Oklahoma State was a similar way, but I mean, a more balanced attack next year with a lot of players that have shown that they can produce at a high level. Give me the Red Raiders.
Yeah, look, moving on to our third team here in most improved college football teams of 2024. We're gonna go to the UCF, right? Down to the Big 12 again. UCF's a team that we've been high on for, the past year or so, had some nice momentum on the recruiting trail. You saw some of that come to fruition a year ago, right? That momentum carried over last year, going 6-6. Yes, not ideal, but also pretty darn good moving from the American to the Big 12, right? Having to play some real good teams in last year's Big 12. And now you get a pretty manageable schedule. You pair that with the fact that we love Gus Malzahn and we love what they brought in with their transfer classes, and their overall win totals up at 7.5. Right, Vegas is predicting at least a game and a half improvement there, and we see a little bit more maybe. What say you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, KJ Jefferson. I mean, dude, we have seen KJ Jefferson produce at a high level in the SEC, like an insanely high level. Like this dude, I mean, last year was he favored to win SEC Offensive Player of the Year? He was up there for sure,
Yeah, he absolutely was.
certainly. And he's and RJ Harvey is coming back at running back, I believe. He was an absolute monster last year. Sure, you lose Javon Baker at wide receiver, who, by the way, was an absolute stud. But Kobe Hudson's pretty good himself. You know, sure you don't have John Reese Plumlee is a legend. Okay, and Gus Malzahn loves his John Reese Plumlee athletes at quarterback just running up. But KJ Jefferson, don't you think that him and Gus Malzahn are kind of a match made in heaven?
It really was. I mean, KJ Jefferson had options to go a lot of places last year in the offseason, and he obviously picked out this one. And obviously, Gus Malzahn is a perfect marriage. Those two guys fit each other so well, what they like, what they dislike. And obviously, we've seen Malzahn have success with very athletic, dual threat quarterbacks, and that's exactly why he wanted to join this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you lose a couple pieces on the offensive line from what I'm looking at right here. Yeah, I mean, when you look at their Bill Connolly's SP plus returning production, I believe has them at like 100th in returning production. But I think a lot of that baked in there is those two offensive line snaps, Javon Baker and John Reese Plumlee. Because I don't know, because if it counts KJ Jefferson, like last year, KJ Jefferson was not very effective, you know.
He didn't. He didn't.
So
He didn't. He was hurt too, wasn't he, for a good bit?
yeah, so like I don't know, I don't know, man. I think this is we put them on this list for a reason. I think they're sneaky. Again, their over under win total is 7.5, and only their second year in the Big 12. It's higher than any other the four new Big 12 teams. Now, sorry, I say four new Big 12 teams from last year. I guess you're looking at Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. Of course, those teams, a lot of those teams have higher win totals than them. But yeah, I'll look at the schedule, man. And once again, I think a lot of these Big 12 schedules, for some reason, are pretty manageable. You know, uh, the issue is they play Florida at Florida. That is going to be a tough game. Of course, like you go to the swamp. Anytime you go to the swamp, you might be asking for trouble, right? However, New Hampshire, Sam Houston, sure, and you're out of conference. TCU, start of the season, I think that's a winnable game. Colorado, you draw Cincinnati, you draw BYU, you draw Arizona State. I don't know. It's manageable. I'm not going to say it's going to go over. I'm not going to say it's going to go under necessarily because you still got to see. I mean, let spring ball play out, see what you got going there. But yeah, this is certainly a team that could be a candidate for a large improvement. Is it going to be 9 wins? I don't. I would lean towards no. But I think the Big 12 just has so many question marks. Like a team like UCF is talented enough to take that step and win some of those games that maybe you wouldn't have thought of. Uh, maybe you wouldn't have thought they'd win.
Well, yeah, that's just the thing. You mentioned a lot of teams in the Big 12 have manageable schedules, but it's also like a lot of teams are very on similar playing fields, whether that's talent wise and just stylistic matchups and all this stuff. But here's the thing: I'm going to trust a team and a coach I believe in who's played in a ton of close games. Gus Malzahn. Secondly, a quarterback that's played in a ton of close games in KJ Jefferson. But also, you can run the football. If you can run the football, you're going to have a real good chance to close out games and to really grind out fourth quarters and teams in the Big 12. And with Jefferson and RJ Harvey, those guys are about as good of a duo as there is in college football. And I to me, with some of the beef on the O line you have there as well, I really like this. And you're sprinkling in some portal guys on defense and seeing if that helps as well. I love it. I think this could be a darn good team in the Big 12. And again, like we talked about with Texas Tech, is they're doing it right. They're starting to recruit really, really well, especially in the states of Florida and Georgia, right where they are located down there, down in the southeast. I like it for them. UCF's a team on the rise, and obviously, like you said, we don't know exactly what the record's going to be. But if there's candidates that are going to have most improved written all over them from a year ago, I think UCF's absolutely there. And teams that benefit from Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12, obviously everyone, right? Obviously, you see those guys off the schedule. That's nice to see. But to me, UCF is one of the teams that really, really benefits because they can now take a step forward into, right, some of the more talented teams in the Big 12.
Yeah, something that I do have a concern with though is did they address their problems on the run defense enough in the transfer portal? It's hard. Like you don't get Walter Nolan's in the transfer portal every day, right? Like it is hard to fix your run defense overnight. It really is. Now you got some linebacker transfers coming in there. Can they do something to help with this run game? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be enough. Fortunately, you don't draw Oklahoma State on your schedule. Now there are some other teams on this schedule that have run the ball pretty effectively these last couple of years. I mean, Utah is one. West Virginia certainly is going to be one. Arizona State ran the ball pretty well last year. Iowa State ran the ball well towards the end of the season in some games, right? In some games. Cincinnati felt like they relied on their run game a lot. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, if you can't plug those holes, you might find yourself losing some of these games that you shouldn't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, moving on. We got our fourth team, Michigan State. Michigan State's going to be one of the most improved teams in the Big 12, Big 10, we believe. They were 4-8 a year ago. Obviously, had a crazy season with Mel Tucker and everything that went on there. Fresh start for Jonathan Smith and staff there. Obviously, he leaves Corvallis, where he had a ton of success there, building up that program to be perennial contenders last couple of years in the Pac 12. He comes in and he's got, by all means, I believe, a very workable schedule. Right, out of conference wise, 3 games you should probably win. Right, your toughest one probably gonna be at Boston College, but hey, they're working on a new coach as well, and Bill O'Brien. And then in conference, I like how it shakes up for them. A lot of your tough games are at home, or more so like controversial close games are going to be at home, right? With Iowa, Indiana, Purdue, Rutgers, teams like that, and then obviously at Michigan, at Oregon, and Ohio State at home. Those are going to be tough. You're probably going to be double-digit dogs in those games. If you win them, that's gravy. If not, you can win other games and still have a really improved season from a year ago. What say you?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. My question marks are obviously like, can this offense improve? Like it is. I don't think it can be overstated, like how terrible this offense was last year. You scored 13 points a game. Now, granted,
Yeah.
the Big Ten was probably the best defensive conference in the country. I think I don't think a ton of people could argue against that. And they did play some really good teams. They obviously played in the Big Ten East, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was Penn State, it was Ohio State, it was Michigan, right? Already. Solid set of defenses you had to play right there. But yeah, is Aiden Childs going to be a dude? What can these wide receivers do? Like, is Nick Marsh as a freshman, is he going to come in and have to play a big role in this receiver room?
He might, but I think they're high on guys from a year ago, Antonio Gates Jr., Jaron Glover, guys going into their third year. Maybe don't have a ton of reps offensively, but are getting there. And also, I have to believe that Michigan State and Jonathan Smith are going to be teams that are active in that spring portal. You get a chance to see how your team looks in the spring ball. And obviously, this is all projection, but you have to feel like they're going to see some holes and some players are going to enter the portal, or maybe, whatever happens there, and you can get them over to East Lansing.
Absolutely. And you do bring over pretty incredible offensive line coach.
Which
And
to yeah.
so are we gonna go back to the Le'Veon Bell days? Not necessarily that Michigan State was pretty balanced when they had Le'Veon Bell, right? They were pretty balanced offense. But I'm saying, like, are you gonna feature some running backs? Are you gonna Are you running the ball a lot more? Are you gonna rely heavily on play action to let Aiden Childs kind of sit back there and do well? I'm imagining that Jonathan Smith isn't changing much up from his offensive scheme in Oregon State, which heavily relied on the run as was. Um, yeah, I will see, man. We'll see. 5.5. Certainly, Vegas thinks that they'll improve by at least a win. We'll see if that comes to fruition. I do agree with you that the schedule is manageable, though, for sure.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, that O-line coach coming in. To me, that's a massive deal because for many years now at Michigan State, that has been a problem, offensive line wise. And part of the reasons that they struggled last year, yes, it was quarterback issues and all that stuff, wide receivers. Obviously, you lose Keon Coleman in spring ball, and obviously that changes how your offense is going to be for sure. But you had a couple of those guys go in the portal, and then obviously come back. And then you bring in a couple guys in the transfer portal, and I do believe they're at least going to get a little bit better. And obviously, it helps having a mobile guy back there like Aiden Childs, and I think a little bit more competent staff offensively that can, just hide or disguise some of their liabilities offensively and play to their strengths more. Obviously, are they going to be scoring 40 points a game? Probably not. But is it crazy to say that they can score 10 to 15, 20 more points than they did just a year ago? I don't I think that's a lot, but I do think that's what you're going to get with this new staff and the way they're doing things a lot differently than Mel Tucker did. Plus, Aiden Childs is so explosive, just so awesome to watch. That was obviously a massive get for Smith the first time he landed him, and then obviously the second time to get him come to follow him to East Lansing. And moving on, we have the U, Miami, Florida. Obviously, a team no stranger to hype at all, but I believe they're really going to be one of the most improved teams in college football in 2024. They went 7-5 just a year ago. Their over-win totals up to 9.5. One of the favorites to win the ACC, a pretty wide open ACC, if you might ask me. Is their schedule tough? Yeah, underratedly pretty darn tough, especially out of conference. You have Florida, and at USF, two in-state games that are kind of brutal, but you don't leave the state of Florida until, what was that, week 6? I mean, you're going to California, but at least you're playing California Golden Bears. Obviously, we love Justin Wilcox over there, but you're going to be more talented in that game. And then you get a bye week and you can reconvene in the rest of the ACC schedule. I really like what Miami's building here, recruiting, transfer portal, doing the right things, hopefully. And their staff pieces, yes, it didn't lead to maybe more wins than we thought, but Shannon Dawson and their staff that they put together a year ago, I think it's going to work this year. Cam Ward comes in. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, like it was margins for them, man. It was margins. It was coaching margins, and it was frankly it was turnovers. I mean, 1.2 interceptions per game. Miami. I've thrown that stat around a couple times on this show. 1.2 interceptions per game, ranking 111th. In some pretty big games too, you know? And you saw what this team was capable of against Texas A&M when they took care of the football. Their athletes made
They
plays
didn't
on
even take care of the football. They didn't even take care of the football. They had some blunders, special teams wise.
well, I'm
Right?
saying like, but they made an explosive special teams touchdown to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
up for that. You know, if
yeah.
their athletes make plays on special teams like they can, and their quarterback takes care of the football, which I think Cam Ward can do, and also Cam Ward can just he can make throws that Tyler Van Dyke cannot. I'm under that impression. Now, Tyler Van Dyke can make some pretty incredible throws. That's why he was pretty highly touted as a prospect. I mean, geez, seems like 2 years ago we were talking about him as potentially a first round quarterback. Mel Kiper had him mocked in the first round preseason 2 years ago. I mean, this is a team. Yeah, sure, you lose Colby Young, but I think you're still talented at wide receiver. Do they get Xavier Restrepo back? That's nuts. That's nuts.
Yeah, that's a big time win there. And you bring over Elijah Alston. I'm sorry, from Marshall, reuniting him with Lance Guillory. I don't know, man. I don't know. You mentioned coaching and turnovers. I mean, part of that was Mario Cristobal in game coaching, which I don't know how much better it's gonna get. Right. I can't predict the future. I don't know if he's realized that's a problem and he's gonna have a support staff to be there for him to make sure that he's doing the right things that he has to do, but also like turnovers and Cam Ward, yes, you get all the upside with him. There are some dangerous spots where he can do too much a little bit, but that was also for Washington State, where there was a serious talent gap there in a lot of the games he was playing. He was playing hero ball, and their O line was doing bad, and he was running around. To me, I think O line's a strength of this Miami football team, right? And obviously, you have to have a good O line. You have to be a good O lineman um, if you're going to play for Mario Cristobal. So we'll see here, but I do love. To me, defensively is why I'm high on them because what you get up front. We talked about Ruben Bain. He is a budding star in college football. He is just about unblockable. He is a freak in nature. He's only getting better in year two. You bring in some damn good recruits, right? Obviously, Justin or Justin Scott, Marquise Lightfoot, Armando Blunt, some high name guys all in
How
the
about CJ
interior. They're quick at
Clark?
picking. CJ Clark. To me that this is a damn good defensive line that they're building there, and obviously taking advantage of some of the teams. Maybe you're playing Florida State, and maybe their line's not as good as it was last year. Clemson struggled offensive line wise, and in the ACC, you can really get better year over year. Obviously, Clemson maybe potential ACC championship game, not on the schedule, but yeah,
Yeah, I think people are like, oh, they lost both their NFL safeties. Like these two safeties, I'm no pro, okay? But they have slowly slipped down draft boards. You know, they have the size, the speed, the athleticism. They have it, right? If you go back and watch that UNC game, man, they got absolutely torched. They got torched by Drake May. Like there were times like when they were just not in the right spot. And then you also look at when they had what's his name? Who's on the Bears right now?
oh, the cornerback from a year ago,
Yeah, just drafted in the second round.
Stevenson, Steven,
Yeah,
or
yes, Stevenson. Stevenson.
yeah.
Gosh, what are we doing as Bears fans? I can't even think of his name. That's nuts. Anyways, he had a really good second. It just felt like it just never came together with those guys, no matter how talented they were. Tyreek Stevenson, that's his name.
Yeah.
Gosh, that was gonna bother me. Huge that we got that. Big time plays. But yeah, sure they're gonna be relying on some transfers in the back end there, but a front seven like that, it might not matter too much. It might not matter as much as you think, you know. And you still get Francisco Mauigoa for another year at middle linebacker when he transferred over from, was it Washington State a
Yep.
year ago? I like him at running back. I mean, you drove what's his name out of there. Now Mark Fletcher's just he's gonna be the guy. I think he's a really special athlete there at running back, and he's gonna be running behind some absolute beasts on the that offensive line. Yeah, this is a team that I think everyone's excited for. Double-digit wins, it's a lot to ask for, but going from 7 wins to 9.5, 10 wins on this show, we would say that is a huge improvement.
Absolutely. Especially what that means for this program. You win 10, 12 games or 10 11 games, you're going to be right in the thick of the playoff push because of the expanded playoffs. And to me, that's exactly where you want to be in year 3 with an expanded playoff of Mario Cristobal. All right. Next team we have here is Texas A&M. Obviously, they are no no stranger to offseason hype, like I said before, but this year feels different. This year feels different. Jimbo
Just
Fisher
like
out the
last
door,
year.
just like it's been every year. But there's some structural changes and visible changes that have happened that lead you to believe this team can really turn that corner and really utilize the talent that it's had for so long there now. Texas A&M went 7-5 last year. Obviously, battled injuries, the quarterback position, obviously battled suspensions and other things going on there with Jimbo Fisher. You get a head coach getting fired middle of the season. Now you bring Mike Elko, pretty darn good staff and a really good transfer portal, which we've talked about in earlier videos, which I encourage you to look at after this video is over. Their over-winning total is 2024 is 8.5. 8.5. That includes an out-of-conference game against Notre Dame, right? Obviously at home, which is going to be a fired-up battlefield. And then you welcome in Texas to the SEC. You get them, and the end they're bookended Notre Dame and Texas, two teams that are going to be fighting for playoff spots. How do you think this year plays out for Texas A&M? What gives you
Well,
optimism that they're on this list? That's more like it.
here's the thing. What are their 4 toughest games on the schedule?
It's probably Notre Dame, right? It's probably Missouri,
Yep.
LSU, and
Yep.
Texas. And I see where you're going with this.
And all those games are at home. Every single one of those. Even Jimbo Fisher had an incredible record at home. It's besides the one blunder against App State, right? He had an incredible record.
Wait.
Specifically against top 25 teams, Jimbo Fisher was electric at home and abysmal on the road. I don't even think he ever won. I don't know that he ever won. Maybe his first year he won a top 25 game on the road, but it is, if there was a win, it was maybe one, right? So you like that. There's a lot of new hype in this area. Like Cal Field is going to be electric, right? And here's the other difference too. The last 2 years, okay, when we talked about this hype, okay, I think we talked about this hype assuming that we were going to get healthy quarterbacks both years. And that has not happened.
Yes.
Actually, the last 3 years, it has not happened. So if you ask me, A, Connor Wigman is really good. Okay. Let's get that out of let's stop ranking him like 10, 11, 12 in the quarterbacks in the SEC. Let's start treating him like a top 6, top 7 quarterback, at least in the SEC. I get it's a
With
small
room to
sample
grow,
size
for sure. With room to
with
grow.
room to grow. And by the way, I think there's, you're like, hey, oh, they lost Evan Stewart at receiver. Oh, they lost Anaya Smith at receiver. Okay, go watch the Texas Bowl. Watch these receivers just ball out. You had like 4 scholarship receivers playing in that game, and they all balled out. And then not include Cyrus Allen, 70% contested catch rate. Hank Bachmeier, I think, had 114 passer rating passing to Cyrus Allen. And Lord knows he did not have 114 passer rating throughout the season. All right. So I think offensively, there's a lot of hope there. You're just praying that you get something on the offensive line, right? You got a lot of pieces in there. You bring in Adam Cushing, who's had success with lesser talent. Defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of question marks. The one question mark that you don't have is on the defensive line, and it's just going to build out from there. Like, can they improve in the secondary? Which I don't know. I think they can. So that is why this team is on this list. It's like they have probably, if you're looking at it, a top 6 or 7 roster in the entire country.
I won't argue with you there. I do think top 10 at least for sure. And that's
Okay.
part of
Yeah,
what
yeah.
Jimbo Fisher has done recruiting wise, but also with that transfer portal class that they brought in. And what I love about it is you saw a lot of really, really good players walk out the door, right? Not only the NFL draft, McKinley Jackson, Anaya Smith, guys that have been staples for you for a while now. Damani Richardson maybe regressed a little bit, but also played a ton of football for you. Edge Cooper, not to mention maybe a first round linebacker there for you. And obviously, not to mention the portal exodus that happened, once Jimbo left and obviously the high end guys, Evan Stewart, you had Fadil Diggs, LT Overton, not to mention Walter Nolan, as well as some other guys. But to me, I just think this team is so deep. And I just think they have not been, to me, they have not been this deep in a while. And I think that's super impressive in year one of a coaching staff with all this turnover. And I know that the transfers have to hit and they have to mesh with the new coaching. A lot has to happen. But to me, on paper wise, the two deeps feel super, super good. And that's why you give me confidence that the bottom won't fall out this year. Not only because you get the stability, and to me, the floor raiser that Mike Elko is, but obviously, the depth there. And you mentioned quarterback injuries, right? Connor Wigman is I think, a rising star in the SEC. I'm as high on him as just about anybody else. I know you're super high on him. You've been high on him for a while now. But Jalen Henderson behind him is really, really good. Marcel Reed, we saw him in the bowl game, really flash some really nice things. Now, obviously, you got to keep those guys through spring practice and into the fall camp. We'll see what happens there with the spring portal window. But where we stand right now, it's hard not to be optimistic about this A&M football team. And they're doing it the right ways. They're built, from the inside out, in my opinion, and with depth. And to me, that combined with not a manageable or easy schedule by any stretch of imagination. Anytime you have to play Notre Dame, Missouri, LSU, Texas Longhorns, and just sprinkle in, at Auburn and obviously at South Carolina, who you've had problems with in the past now.
No, it's 1 year.
Um,
You're like
I
nine
think it
and
was
one
two
against them.
years. I think it was 2 years. I thought it was
No, it's just 1 year. I'm telling you, it's just one
okay.
year.
We'll see. But regardless, to me, I think
Also,
there's so much reason to be optimistic.
try this on for size two, and you like to play the if, then what game or whatever. But like the Miami game, the momentum shifted on that kickoff return that you let up for a touchdown. In the Tennessee game, you give it the punt return for a touchdown. You didn't have a special teams coordinator, and now all of a sudden you bring Patrick Doherty. Sorry, Doherty. Patrick Doherty. Gosh, I gotta practice saying that. Maybe you can actually have some improvement on special teams. Maybe, just maybe, you can get some improvement on that special teams because it was pretty abysmal last year. Plus, Tyler White's coming in as a punter, #1 rated punter in the country a couple years ago. So we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, definitely on the watch list for potentially most improved team in 2024.
And that'll do it for our most improved teams of college football in 2024. Switching over to maybe the fallers, maybe the least improved teams, maybe teams that take a step back from a year ago, riding the highs of last year, and maybe take a step back, whether it's injury or whether it's transfer portal, coaching changes,
NFL.
schedule, or NFL, or maybe a combination of all of it, right? We're going to start here with Northwestern. And as much as it pains me to put them on this list, we talked about their schedule
We got
in just a
burned
couple
last year for
videos ago.
doing this.
We've got burned before. And obviously, selfishly, I'll be rooting for them because I've always been a fan. I grew up around, the Chicago area. I always appreciated what they've done there with so little. And now, they're getting upgraded to their stadium, which is awesome for long-term wise. But in short term, it's going to be a tough year. Not only do you have to play, in these random places where you don't know exactly where you're going to be playing yet, not going to have any true home games. But you went 8-5 last year in the Big Ten, the Big Ten West, and now you get a pretty tough schedule and no home games, and
Was
everyone
it? It
else
was it
around
was
you.
7-5 though in the regular season though, right? Because they won their bowl
I'm
game
sorry,
or no?
yes, 7-5 in the
But
regular
like
season.
either
My
way, like
apologies.
still 8-5, nuts.
Nuts. So now their over win total is bumped down just a little bit to 5.5, and Vegas thinks they're going to regress just a little bit, but obviously who knows with Northwestern. But what say you?
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and they return almost everyone, dude. It's crazy. They did not hit the transfer portal hardly because it's hard with the academic requirements there. Really, the guys you really lose Ben Bryant and Bryce Gallagher. Those are the two guys that you lose. Now,
Yep.
substantial leaders on that team, both of those guys. I mean, I still am like have this weird belief that Ben Bryant is for some reason a good quarterback because he's actually found ways to win games everywhere he's been. I know Cincinnati fans would disagree with me on that for sure, but Eastern Michigan fans, Northwestern fans, he's won some ball games. He's won some ball games. So I don't know, but again, I still think it was a It was nuts that they won as many games as they did. I'm sorry. They should not have come back against Minnesota. I mean, did they beat Wisconsin?
I believe so. I'll double check that in their
And
schedule
they beat
here.
Illinois. They beat Illinois in like a shootout, right? Should not have won that game either. I don't know how this team won 7 games last year. I for sure think that there's some regression. I think 5.5. It'll be interesting though, because this schedule, look at this schedule. Okay. You go to Washington, you got to play Duke, but you're out of conference. We already talked about this as one of the toughest schedules in the country because of their, you know, home field situation, not being able to play at Ryan Field. You got a conference. It's tough, man. Ohio or Miami, Ohio, who just won the MAC and returned almost everyone. And then Duke, who, by the way, that's not a home game. It's a neutral site game. So, yeah, man, this is tough schedule. Yes, you're returning most of the same team. David Braun is a very good coach from what we've seen so far in one season. I'm sure that they're going to be all playing for each other. They're going to be playing together. Who knows? They might surprise us again and make a bowl game, but not that necessarily they'll go under their win total of 5.5. But I would expect some regression from 7-5.
I think part of it is everyone around them in their stratosphere, in their tier of the Big Ten, is getting better. I think Wisconsin's getting better year over year. I think Purdue's getting better year over year. I think Iowa will be healthy this year, even though Iowa beat you last year. I think Illinois was the worst it's been going to be under Brett Bielema just a year ago. Obviously, you don't play Minnesota, but I think they're going to be better than they were just a year ago. Indiana is obviously, you assume they're going to improve with the new coaching staff in there. And obviously, just the other games at Washington. You're going to have a talent disadvantage in that, and you're going to be on the road in a very hostile environment. Michigan, Ohio State, two teams that you're going to really struggle to compete with athlete wise. Yeah, I don't love the schedule for them. I hate to say it, but to me, I guess part of it is, like you said, is just I don't know how they won this many games last year. And I just think a little bit of regression to the mean is going to happen. It's natural in college football. It ebbs and flows. Most programs are not factories. They're not a reload and just get better year over year over year. It's a cycle. It's cyclical. And that's the beauty of college football is that you build up, and that makes an 8 5 year that much more special for Northwestern fans. And the reality is this year, I don't know. But obviously, what do we know? What does anyone know about Northwestern? Can you predict them year over year and tell me, okay, this is the year they're not gonna compete for the Big Ten West, or this is the year they're gonna go 1-11 and not win a single game in the United States? You know, it could be anywhere in between.
100%. 100%.
All right, moving on. We got Oklahoma State, a team that was a very popular team on the show last year for multiple reasons. Obviously, you know, a little big time long shot hedge from Matthew had him feeling good. Obviously, they made it to the Big 12 championship just a year ago after a brutal start to the season. They went 9-3 in the regular season and just had a tremendous season with Alan Bowman. Alan Bowman's back, right? And
By
Ollie
the way,
Gordon's back
plus 12,500 to win the Heisman, that Ollie Gordon kid is. Just saying.
right
And he
now,
hardly played in the first 4 games of last year. I'm just going to say that. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. He is 125 to 1 to win the Heisman. Just saying. This is not advice. I'm just
but you're
saying
just saying.
if you dabble in that and you're going to throw some, if you're going to bet on a Heisman winner anyways, all I'm saying is could be worth a tiny sprinkle.
And it seems like they're a team that returns a lot of production, don't they? I mean, they're fourth in returning
Yeah.
production,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I mean, top 15, both offensively and defensively. The problem is I just thought their schedule last year was super easy. And that's why you saw them. You saw the window that they had in the Big 12. And like maybe if they win a couple games here and there, they can really do some damage in the Big 12. And they did. And they got hot. And at home, they are such a dangerous team in Stillwater. That's one of the places where you just do not want to go see a conference opponent in Stillwater, especially when they're humming or when you least expect them to do so. Mike Gundy loves to do that. But to me, their schedule is just it's kind of tough this year. I have to believe Arkansas will be better than last year. Taylor Green, maybe Taylor Green season. We'll see.
I
We'll see if
love
Bobby.
Taylor Green.
We'll see if Bobby Petrino can reel him in. And
There will
but
be no
obviously,
disrespect of Taylor Green on this show.
no, not at all. South Dakota State, which I'm not going to sit here and tell you that South Dakota State should be favored in that game, but they are a machine right now in the FCS, and obviously they lose a lot of good pieces. and some coaching staff. But yeah, they're that's not going to be easy. You got to go to Tulsa, which is whatever. But Utah, Kansas State, West Virginia, at BYU, at Baylor, Arizona State improving under Kenny Dillingham, at TCU, Texas Tech improving under Joey McGuire, and at Colorado to finish the year. To me, that's just there's not a single game in the Big 12 other than maybe Arizona State, who we're kind of high on, maybe that roster getting better year over year and that coaching staff, that you feel good about them winning. And that's the reality of Big 12. But it's also like that's so much volatility you can have there. You could go Oklahoma State. I wouldn't be surprised if they went 3-9 or they went 4-5 or was it four? I'm sorry, 4-8. Just would not surprise me because of the volatility that's going to be there in the Big 12 and the way that their schedule shakes out dynamically wise, because of who's on the road, who's at home, and when you're playing them and whatnot. To me, it just screams regression season.
Yeah. That doesn't mean, actually, it does mean that. The issue is, like, when I look at this schedule, it's like, I still think there's a lot of question marks with Kansas State. I think there's a lot of question marks with BYU. I think Baylor, Arizona State, TCU, Colorado, Arkansas. Like, it was an easier schedule last year. I still think Oklahoma State could win 8 games, Like, I still think they could do that. Now, that would still be regression, right? From 9-3. That's what we're talking about here. So, like,
And Big 12, more so Big 12 runner-ups,
yeah,
which is what they were a year
yeah.
ago. To me,
And
that's where you see some of that
yeah.
regression.
And that secondary was terrible last year. It was terrible. Let me whip out some stats for you right here. Oklahoma State, their pass defense, passing yards per game, 125th in the country. Passing yards per attempt, 125th. Passing yards per completion, 128th. Total yards per game on defense, 122nd. I mean, they're 91st in points per game let up. I mean, it's like their offense is going to be awesome, though. Rashad Owens is awesome. Brendan Presley is awesome. I like Alan Bowman, I think, more than most people do. Ollie Gordon, obviously, that offensive line's coming back. It's gonna be like, can they improve on the defensive side of the ball? Like, I don't. They didn't bring in that many transfers at all, did they?
On the defense side, no, they brought in a safety and a defensive lineman. That's about it.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see where that goes, man. But I'm with you. Like, yeah, it was a favorable schedule for them last year. Now, do I think that this still is a pretty decent team? I mean, they beat Oklahoma last year. They beat Oklahoma. Now, could they compete with Texas? No, not necessarily. It's like,
Or UCF.
here's the thing about this team. Yeah, there could be regression, and we could call them a least improved team candidate, but I still have a hard time seeing the wheels fall underneath or seeing the floor fall underneath them, right? Like, this is not going to be a collapse season for Oklahoma State. If they regress, it's not going to be collapse, right?
I don't I think, to me, I've learned enough to just never say never to the Big 12, right? I don't know if I can realistically sit here and say that nothing is possible, or that anything is impossible in the Big 12, just because the nature of what it's going to be this year. And to me, you won so many close games, Kansas
I
State,
know. They should not have
Kansas,
won that
West
BYU game.
Virginia. BYU was wild. We were watching that together,
That
and
was
that was
awesome.
crazy. And
To send him to the
obviously,
Big 12 championship.
to send it to the Big 12, and obviously, you just saw, to me, you saw the wheels come off against UCF and what happened there. Yes, it was a weird game, wild game. I get that,
Rainy. I
whatever.
mean, you had
But
some turnovers early. Gus Malzahn kind of had him figured out.
yeah, but who's to say that didn't put on tape exactly what you need to do to really stop Ollie Gordon and company there? So I don't know. To me, I just think I'm a little bit lower than you are on them. Obviously, you're maybe it's recently biased because of how grateful you are of them last year. but
I am.
but regardless,
Okay,
I see your
just
point.
but
Your
let me.
point is
I'm
absolutely
saying,
made.
like, the wheels falling beneath. Like, what's the wheels falling underneath them? Is that not making a bowl game?
4 or 5 wins. Yeah.
When was the last time that happened to Mike Gundy's tenure?
Trust me, I know. And when am I going to learn to stop doubting Mike Gundy? When am I going to learn?
I don't know. I don't know.
All right, moving on. We have our next candidate for most least improved team, most regressed team, however you want to phrase it. We got UCLA. UCLA was 7-5 last year, almost a disappointing 7-5. They
Yeah.
came in with a lot of
I took
hype.
their over. Their over's at 8.5 last year. I took it. I took their over, dude.
It was tough, and a lot of that was Chip Kelly kind of one foot out the door, and you had some quarterback injuries and
Just
weird
bad
drama with
quarterback
Dante
play.
Moore,
Not even an
bad O
injury. I mean,
line play.
kind of quarterback injuries, but also this is bad overall. Like everyone was bad in that quarterback room.
But you also played pretty darn good football up until mid-November, and you lost to Arizona State inexplicably, and then the wheels fell off. Right? You beat USC, whatever. I mean, just most people did in Pac-12 last year, but then California embarrassed you at home, and I don't know. To me, we already did our video on new coaching staff there, and we'll see how it fits with UCLA. I'm high on it long term. I just think short term it's going to be tough moving to moving to the Big 12. I'm so sorry. Let me start up. Moving to the Big 10 with a pretty tough schedule out of conference wise. You got Hawaii at Hawaii, which I mean, great idea. UCLA going to Hawaii, and what you need to get a bye week in week one. That's your bye week this year. That's kind of
Yeah.
brutal. And I
Also,
don't, we know how we feel about that. And LSU.
first time head coach too. Like with this travel schedule, you have a first time head coach. Like for starters, it's like, yeah, like he was a former player, and I'm sure that he understands what it takes to get prepared for a game. But I think it's different when you're looking at it through the lens of a head coach and you haven't prepared your team like this before, and you haven't set the travel schedules, and you haven't. Uh, well, I think like rhythm, practice rhythm, travel rhythm has a lot to do with like coaches. Coaches can alleviate some of that pressure and make their teams more prepared and ready for those road trips. We'll see if Deshaun Foster's got in him. He's first year head coach. Like you said, the over on win total is 5.5. Like Vegas is agreeing with us here that regression is coming. It's coming hard. I don't know. Like, do you like this roster a lot? Like, I don't see myself hating it, but like you lose a good
De-
bit, man. Like really elite talent.
Defensively, you lose a ton. And obviously, starting with D'Anton Lynn, who was a budding star in college football wise defensively, he heads across town to USC. And obviously, Lincoln Riley, you're already seeing dividends return on the recruiting trail and practice reports. Everything's nice out of there. You know how good he was for you. Defensive line wise, you had a bunch of really good seniors on that team, namely Laiatu Latu, who's going to be a first round pick for you. And obviously, Carson Steele was a stud for you, but I like TJ Harden as well. But they're a better combo than, you know, maybe you'd like to have there. And obviously, Ethan Garbers. I think a healthy Ethan Garbers is a fine quarterback in the Big Ten. That's okay. But I mean, outside of Michael J. or J. Michael Sturdivant, do you like anybody else offensively? I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of
That's the team
could
I'm
be
gonna
in a
be
tough
like.
year.
I'm gonna be reading those practice reports, following those beat writers, like seeing what they like. Who are they on? Like I'll be surprised to see like who's coming out of that and names I can get excited about for this year. But yeah, I mean the schedule I mean it's so brutal. If you haven't watched our schedule videos, toughest schedules in 2024 video. There's two of them. UCLA is on that list. And for dang good reason, dude. Dang good reason. And not only it also schedules are relative too to like, how do you think this team's gonna perform? Like uh a game at Nebraska, right, is a lot tougher for a team like UCLA than it would be for Georgia, right?
Yeah.
This is just a brutal schedule, man. Brutal schedule. You regress a lot on the defensive side of the ball. Like you had a really good defense last year. You had some whoopsies in the secondary for sure. But overall, man, this defense kind of produced. Defense kind of produced. And they did enough to keep you in some games, like the Utah game. Probably could have won that game. Of course, Dante Moore throws that pick six early on, and they never looked back from there. But you were second in rushing yards per game allowed. Uh Second in rushing yards per attempt in the country, 2.7 yards per attempt. The teams didn't even run the ball either, 44% of the time. That was sixth in the country. So the teams were throwing the ball at a pretty effective clip against them. But then again, usually also was very effective at getting to the quarterback as well on those dropbacks. But again, you don't. what is that? Four guys you lose in that front seven? Five?
including the linebacker. Yeah, and you're gonna see teams in the Big Ten that are just gonna run the football, like Minnesota. Yeah, sure, they're gonna try to throw the ball more than last year, but realistically, come week 7, they're gonna be screw it. We're gonna run the ball, right? Like, and Darius Taylor is gonna have 200 yards on you. Rutgers, another team that's gonna pound the football. Nebraska, pound the football. Iowa, pound the football.
Penn
Right?
State.
Penn State, Oregon,
Or
gonna be physical. LSU will be physical. They got a great O line as well. I hate the schedule dynamics. And you're out of conference. Does anyone feel good about any of these games? Like, yes, you should beat Hawaii at Hawaii, but it's at Hawaii.
Timmy Chang.
Timmy Chang. And then also Jeff Tedford, by the way, staying at Fresno State. Awesome news. Love to hear that everything's okay with him at Fresno State. But you get them at the end of the year for shits and giggles. Like, what is this? What is this? And they're a team that returns a ton offensively. A ton offensively. Hopefully a healthy Mikey Keene at that point.
Is
Yeah,
Eric
to
Brooks
me,
back
this
for them as well? Fresno State.
I, b- I believe so.
And
And
their running back, Marcus Brooks? No.
Sherrod, Malik
Sherrod.
Sherrod.
Malik Sherrod. Gosh.
Not to
I was thinking
mention,
Taj Brooks. We were talking about Taj Brooks.
not to
Whatever.
mention just the tough Big Ten schedule in general. To me, 5.5 is respectable just because maybe you think you get 2 wins, 2 to 3 wins with Indiana thrown in there. But other than that, it's going to be a dogfight to get up to 5, 6 wins for you in year one. All right, heading over to Louisville now, other side of the country to the ACC. Louisville, very successful season just a year ago. They went 10-2, right? They made it to the ACC championship game, right? And year one of the Jeff Brom did not end the way you wanted it to, with the ACC loss, the Kentucky loss, and obviously with the USC loss and the Holiday Bowl. And maybe it's going to trickle over to 2024. And this does not mean that this is going to be a bad football team. This does not mean that we think Jeff Brom's a bad coach. We are super high on Jeff Brom. We think Jeff Brom's an incredible coach. We love what he's done in the
Yeah.
portal
You're
at
talking about
times.
two guys who slammed their salamis on the over last year. I mean,
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to try to talk through that and be professional here. But Austin P, Jacksonville State, you feel good about that out of conference wise. But everything else, to me, Notre Dame out of conference, Kentucky out of conference, both those games on the road. In conference, you get at Kentucky, to Stanford across the country, at Virginia and Frisky Anthony Calandria, and obviously Miami and SMU and Georgia Tech, mega frisky. Teams I do not want to play. Teams I do not want to play in the ACC just because they can catch you sleeping any week. And to me, 10.5, 10 wins last year, their over win total's down to 8.5, right? Which is about where it was just a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, just because the schedule was pretty nice to have in year one under Jeff Brom. But to me, I'm seeing some regression here, win total wise. What say you?
absolutely. I mean, you look at for an ACC team, this is as hard as it gets for an ACC team, right? I mean, the only thing that could be worse, you draw Florida State, right? But other than that, I mean, you get Kentucky out of conference, and Georgia Tech is on the up and up. You get Notre Dame as well, Miami. I mean, thankfully you get that game at home, but Clemson, you got to go to Clemson. So you're telling me like if you're gonna go over your win total, you got to win one of those four games, or one of Notre Dame, Miami, Clemson, and Kentucky, right? You got to win one of those. But if you include Georgia Tech in there, then you got to win two of those five, and not to mention SMU. It's not too bad. I mean, they got a good ball club there. Brett Lashley's got his boys helming, if you ask me. So I mean, it's nice that you get at Boston College too, another team that like get Bill O'Brien in there. Like, what are they gonna do over there? I mean, I mean, this is also frisky quarterback central here. Got Anthony Calandria over there at Virginia, Tommy Castellanos over at Boston College, Eli Holstein. No, I'm just kidding. That guy stinks.
Maybe Elijah Brown, true freshman
Yeah,
at
maybe
Stanford.
Elijah Brown over at Stanford. So this is frisky quarterback central over here. So I would be worried about Louisville hitting that over 8.5. If you were to put a gun to my head, I'd probably take the under. But again, we don't do that in April. We don't do that in April. Relax, everyone.
No.
Everyone relax. We don't
Speaking
do
of
that.
frisky quarterbacks, Jack Plummer graduates, and say what you want about him. He played a lot of football. He knew exactly what Jeff Brown wanted to do. He was absolutely willing to hand the ball to two freak running backs and Jawar Jordan and Isaiah Grendo, who, by the way, are also gone to the NFL, along with Jamar Thrash, a guy that's really going to turn heads in the NFL. You were high on him. We were high on him. He was a monster for you last year. Now, yes, you bring in a ton in the portal. Is that sustainable for another year? I mean, you got to hit on these guys. If you don't, it could be a long year. I like some of these guys. I mean, in an ideal world, they just plug and play and they fit. That the production you lost from a year ago. But I don't know. Ja'Cory Brooks hasn't played football in a while. You don't know how Tyler Shucks is he going to stay healthy? Is Brady Allen ready to play? Is Pierce Clarkson behind him? How does your O line do? I mean, you got last year you had Eric Miller come in as a stud tackle for you from Purdue, and now you got replace him with Ruben Uninji. I'm sorry, and Victor Cutler, and a couple other transfers you have behind them. And so we'll see what happens here. I love Colin Lacey. We talked about him before. That guy's a pretty darn good player. Tyler Barron, pretty productive player at Tennessee as well. Jordan Garrard, a guy I'm super high on for FIU. Originally committed to Minnesota out of the portal, flips to Louisville. Huge boost for you up the middle there. But I don't know. I mean, last year you hit on some transfers and you got a good schedule. This year you got a bad schedule and now you got to hit on some more transfers. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, dude. I'm with you. It's so many question marks. Like it's so tough to tell. It's so tough to tell what this team's going to be. They have the talent there. Like the talent is there, like on the team. Colin Lacey, Ja'Cory Brooks, Tyler Shuck, Penny Boone, Donald Chaney. I mean, offensively, talent's there. I just still have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions. And again, this is regression from your win total last year. They won 10 games, right? They're not winning 10 games again this year, right? There will be regression. Will the wheels fall underneath them? I don't know. If Tyler Shuck can't get through a full season, it might. It really could. It really could. Jeff Brown's a good coach, though. So, like, even if they do not meet expectations this year, I am not worried about his future at Louisville or his ability to build a program, like at all. Like you won the Big Ten West at Purdue, like with Purdue. Like that's nuts. That's nuts. Won 9 games with Purdue. 9? 8 games. 8 games. Either way.
I will say though, I will say with I do have a little reservation how he's doing high school recruiting wise and how much time and effort he's putting into that. I mean, they were 58th last year. I get it. You kind of had to use a lot of scholarships on some transfer portal guys, more experienced guys, because of all the guys that were leaving from this year's team. But we'll see how you can do that year over year. Is that sustainable? But yeah, for Louisville 10-2 last year, we'll see how they do this year. Moving on to Oklahoma, they are 10-2 a year ago. They had a ton of success, but also in some disappointing spots as well. A lot of optimism on this team and this program moving forward. I mean, we're on high as Jackson Arnold, as a lot of people are. I mean, I love the way Brent Venables recruits, in the portal, in the trenches, in high school. I think this is a really nice program going forward. But the reality of the situation is you lose a lot. You still have a lot there. I get that. And you got some nice talent coming in defensively and maybe in the interior of the O line as well. But I don't know, man. This
See, I think they
schedule
get
is
better. Like I think they
brutal.
get better as a team, but like if you think they're gonna get to 10 wins with this schedule, like that would be pretty nuts, if you ask me. That would be pretty nuts. This is a
Yeah.
nutty schedule that they have going on here. They have another
And
schedule. I mean, you play Tennessee, thankfully get that game at home. You gotta go to Auburn, which by the way,
never fun.
never fun. Never fun. Texas, obviously, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, LSU. I mean, you're gonna have what, 4 preseason top 10 teams at least on that schedule. Add Tennessee, add LSU, add Auburn. That's nuts. That's nuts. The only one you're missing is Georgia. But quite frankly, it's just tough. It's already tough. And then also you're out of conference. Like, yeah, don't do yourself any favors by getting beat up and out of conference with Houston and Tulane, back to back before you get into that Tennessee game there. I don't
It's
know,
two
man.
head coaches. Sorry. Two head coaches that are looking to make a splash in year one. And what better splash to make than Willie Fritz in Houston beating you, John Summerall and Tulane beating Oklahoma, and they're out of conference in September.
Yeah. Here's what could happen though, right? You lose Caden Green to the transfer portal. You lose Tyler Guyton. Like this offensive line is going to be completely different than what it was last year. Completely. Yeah, like I know that Gavin Sawchuk is really good. I know Jackson Arnold's a good athlete. The wheels could fall from underneath them. Like if this offensive line is terrible. And we've seen that happen like some pretty talented teams in the SEC that just have bad offensive lines and it catches up to them really fast. It happens so fast. Even if you have a couple of injuries too. Like Oklahoma might have a good starting five, good enough, right? What happens when someone gets hurt? I mean, you saw Tennessee play Florida last year, and they had two guys out that game, and they looked terrible on the up front. Jalen Wright, and probably number two running back on a lot of people's boards, NFL boards, did nothing. Did nothing. You had three good running backs on that roster. Nothing. So we'll see what that offensive line looks like. Defense, you're just hoping that like incrementally they can take steps with Brent Venables, and you know that the floor is going to be raised. 41 points per game allowed last year. Uh, they were not very good. I guess in they were okay in the secondary one. Now I'm looking at it, but they were just pretty middle of the road. But their offense is what saved them, right? They were just absolutely insanely explosive on that side of the ball. They had a better offensive line. I do think like everywhere else they got a lot better though. Like, can you agree with me there? Maybe not defensive line,
But you're
but like
still
just
bringing in some. I mean,
yeah.
David Stone's a guy that I mean, if he's going to be
Caden Woolard,
yeah, if they're going to be like your two deeps, if those guys are in your two deeps, I feel pretty darn good about your D line. And obviously, I really like their secondary. Woody Washington, Billy Bowman, another year
Billy
Peyton
Bowman
Bowen.
coming back. How about that, dude?
Yeah, that
Good
was
for college
massive. And
football.
obviously, Danny Stutzman, very popular player up the middle for you in that second level. But to me, what I think you mentioned the O line has to fix it. It doesn't matter how good your wide receiver core is, which I really really like. I love Deion Burks. Deion Burks is a guy we talked about him. He's one of the more underrated players in the Big 12 just a year ago for Purdue. You get Andrel Anthony back, who was probably the best receiver last year before he went down. Nick
Nick
Anderson's another year
Anderson.
older. Brennan Thompson's a great piece for you back there. Jaquaz Petaway, another year older. Jaleel Farouk, hopefully you get him back to 2022 form. Yeah, I to me that is an O line going to be good. And can Jackson Arnold, if he's not a good O line, what can he do? As a new guy, yes, he played a little bit for you last year, but it's going to be different when the bullets are flying and your O line is not helping you, and you got to play at Auburn on the road there. You got to play, like you said, at Ole Miss with that newly vamped D line and everybody working hard, practicing hard there, whatever that means. And obviously at Missouri, right? And at LSU. And LSU's got a damn good defensive coach now with Bo Davis coming over on D line, Blake Baker as well, coming from Missouri. Jeez, man. I do not envy Jackson Arnold this year because he could be a really, really good player and it might not show this year. And he could get a lot of hate unjustly. But we'll see though. I just think it's tough. I just it's not what you wanted year one with Oklahoma. The schedule gods, aka Greg Sankey, did not do you any favors. All right. And moving on to our next team, right? Most regress, least improved teams from just a year ago. And this is a pretty obvious answer, but we have to talk about it, right? Defending runner ups from just a year ago, Washington. They lose a ton, not only the coaching staff wise, but player wise. They're going to have just a brand new roster up and down, brand new faces in the facilities, everything, everybody learning together. And obviously, pair that with, like you said, Matthew, a travel schedule, which has you go, to Rutgers in Piscataway, New Jersey, and then in other places in the Big Ten, as well as at Penn State in Beaver Stadium. So, yeah, this is not something you wanted in year one under Jed Fish, a coach that we like as a coach. I think he's a really good hire for him. I think he's brought in some nice transfers. I think he did a really, really good job of developing, bringing talent at Arizona. And I think he could do the same at Washington if you give him time. But this year, I don't know, man. 12-0 last year in the regular season, and their overall total is at 7.5. Now, Michigan last year was 12-0, and they lose a ton of pieces. They lose their coaching staff and their portal, but their overall total is 9.5, right? Much different. And they have a tough schedule, too. They have Texas out of conference, right? So what happens here? I just think regression to the mean and a ton of players lost for Washington.
Yeah, I think it's like you look at that passing attack, and it was such an outlier, and you lose dang near everything from that, right? Right? I mean, well, your biggest
Eh,
pieces, right? Michael Penix, Uh, Obviously Roma Dunze. You lose Troy Fontano. You lose your center as well. He headed over to Alabama. You lose Ryan Grubb, that offensive coordinator. He's going to be the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks this upcoming season. Yeah, it was just such an outlier when you lose all of that. I mean, for starters, Washington also lost a lot of talent on defense. All right, let's not kid around there. I believe they're 92nd in returning production on defense, 134th, last in the country in returning production on offense, or second to last. Someone must be worse. So there's 135 teams this year. So I guess one team is worse, but they're 130th overall. The only other teams that are down there with them, Georgia State, Del McGee's new head coach there. Buffalo, they got a new head coach there. Ohio just got shredded by the portal offensively. They just got shredded. Or poor Ohio, man. And then Troy, you had a head coach switch. Michigan had a head coach switch. North Carolina just stinks. JMU had a head coaching switch. UL Monroe had a head coaching switch. Oregon State had a head coaching switch. I mean, all these teams, all of these teams. New Mexico, they had a head coaching switch, right?
Yep.
It's our guy. Rocky
From
Long.
Bronco Mendenhall.
Bronco
Bronco
Mendenhall.
Mendenhall.
Duh.
Rocky
Duh.
Long. Oh my
But
God.
he's right. Mentee of Rocky Long. Mentee of Rocky Long. That 4.25 over there. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough spot. And like you said, the schedule. I mean, here's the thing. With Michigan, you didn't rely on the quarterback play, right? You didn't rely on the quarterback play to be a great team. And then also they did a good job stacking talent, I think. And they've also had a history of development. No, not that Washington and Michigan are two prime examples of, you know, outperforming the recruiting rankings consistently. I mean, look at Washington. The NFL talent that Washington has put out there relative to their star ratings is nuts. It is nuts. Actually absurd. If you go back and look, that's your homework, guys. You viewers, besides liking and subscribing, commenting, whatever, your homework is to figure out, look at all those Washington Huskies players, where they were rated in high school and where they went in the NFL draft, because it is absolutely bonkers. So, and to add to that list are two, potentially three first rounders that are coming out in the draft this year for Washington. So that just too much for a program like Washington. This is just too much. Plus the move to the Big Ten, plus the outlier that you had in the passing game, and you lose it. I mean, plus all the coaching staff. There's just too much you lost, man. There's just too much. So I think 7.5 is a pretty good line here. Let's see, you got Weber State you can win, Eastern Michigan you can win, Washington State you can win, Northwestern you can win, Rutgers you can win, Indiana you can win for sure. Like those are like six, like, hey, I feel really, really good about those 6 wins. And then you just look at USC, I mean, Penn State, UCLA. Now you get UCLA at home, which is nice. Oregon, Michigan. I mean, man, it's not the toughest Big Ten schedule, but it's still tough. It's still gonna be tough. You get Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan.
No favors there in year one. It's also like the dynamics of it, right? At Iowa, at Rutgers, games that you feel like you should win. You should have an advantage there, but you're going across the country and playing in pretty hostile environments, especially in Iowa City, as well as, a damn near long ass flight all the way to New Jersey from Seattle. So we'll see here. I obviously going to be rooting for Washington because you just feel bad, for everything that happened there. It was a tough early January, wasn't it? After very high riding Sugar Bowl win over Texas. And then, but hey, we talked about, that's the ebbs and flows. That's the ups and downs, the cyclical nature of college football, right? A program
And we
like
love
Washington,
Jedfish.
you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And maybe they'll overachieve. Will Rogers could be a dude. I love Jeremiah Hunter. I love Jeremiah Hunter for you, and to pair him with Jed Fish's offense there. So we'll see. We shall see. Moving on to, yeah, that's about it for our most improved, least improved. Am I right there, Matthew? Anyone that you want to talk about?
Well, did you want to get into the Dream Crushers segment?
I would love to. This is something I've been thinking about for a while now, and I would love our audience to give us feedback whenever they can. So let us know. If you're still watching the video right now, please hit a like, that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe as well. But moving on to our next segment, which is the Dream Crushers, Dream Busters, Bubble Bursters, whatever you want to call it, in college football this year. Remember, there's going to be a bubble, and it's going to be pretty big this year because of that 12-team playoffs and then all the at-large bids that are to be had there. And we identified a couple teams, I believe 4, 5, and because of their schedule and who they play, when they play them, where they play them, and the talent and the explosiveness that's on that roster, that could be a team that maybe doesn't compete for a conference title, but can be a huge thorn in the side of somebody they play that could just stop somebody from competing for a title. Matt, anything else to add
Absolutely.
for us?
And I only put one name on this list, and you put I think four of the five, and I love the ones that you put on here.
Let's get into it.
I love every single one of them.
Let's get it. Starting in with one of the most dangerous teams in a big game, it has to be Hugh Freeze and Auburn. Not only are you playing in Jordan Hare, which is about as funky and about magical or scary or voodoo, whatever you want to call it, that happens there in Jordan Hare, but you get Hugh Freeze. And Hugh Freeze is known for just, first of all, Alabama. I mean, just ask any Alabama fan about how they feel playing Hugh Freeze, and they will lie straight to your face and they will tell you that, oh, I'm not worried. We're more talented.
It does not matter how bad their quarterback is either, by the way. It does not matter
Nope.
if they could throw for 400 yards or they could throw for 95 yards and it could still be an absolute barn burner in Jordan Hare. Now, this game, I believe it's Bryant Denny though, right? So that is a
It'll be at Bryant Denny.
huge sigh of relief for Bama fans having your first year with the new head coach there. That's not named Nick Saban.
Hugh Freeze has beaten Alabama in Bryant Denny. People remember the Cooper Bateman game, obviously infamous in Bama history, but that was the turning point in your season. Obviously, Jacob Coker took the reins from there, and you figured out you could just run the ball with Derrick
With
Henry a
Derrick
thousand
Henry.
times.
Hey,
But anyways, I'm circling a couple games here, and what I think could be potential just massive environments
there's
for
so
Auburn,
many on here, by the way, that are
and
potential playoff busters.
that's the reality of college football in the SEC, especially this year. You already mentioned Alabama. That's at Alabama. I'll give you another one on the road. Obviously, Georgia. I mean, Auburn has given Georgia fits at times in the past couple of years, and Hugh Freeze last year almost did it again. Yes, it was at Jordan Hare, but a lot of people. I mean, yeah. So we'll see there. Obviously, to me, I think Auburn gets a lot better this year, and Georgia. I don't know if they get much better than last year. We'll see. Obviously, disappointing end of the year, but you lose a lot. You lose a lot of some key pieces, especially offensively. Another one I'll throw out is at Missouri. At Missouri, Missouri is a team that a lot of people are high on for a good reason. They played great football all last year. Eli Drinkwitz is a hell of a coach. They put together an unbelievable staff for last year. They lose a lot of it to LSU, that defensive staff, which is tough. But you still return a lot of production, and some key faces and key names that are coming back for you. Missouri is going to be right there in the thick of things, looking to compete in the SEC for a title, but also for a playoff spot. And Auburn playing Missouri in mid-October, that's going to be the feel of a bubble game for Missouri. All right.
Absolutely. And another bubble game, potentially. Now, this is late in the year, so you would already know whether it is a bubble game or not, but Texas A&M, you get them at home. Like Texas A&M, they get all their big game, like their ranked opponents, quote unquote, like they get them at home. So if they win a couple of those games, you could see Texas A&M potentially on that bubble, and then you roll in there a huge look ahead game right before you play Texas at home with, and you got to go into Jordan Hare. Oh, actually, yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. That's literally the week before.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. You want to talk about if we had a segment of pure trap game alert, that is trap game in its purest form. That's like Maryland, Michigan, right before Ohio State. That's just what that is. Illinois right before
Classic
Ohio State or for
Mike
Michigan.
Loxley, Brett Bielema just waiting there and just obviously licking their chops. And yeah, Auburn, it's just, I mean, historically, if you followed college football, they've been such a dangerous team. They've been a team nobody wants to play in November, or especially when you have when you have real value on the game that you're playing, especially if you're going to Auburn. Yeah, to me, I mean, Auburn is just had to be on this list, had to be first. If you have any complaints with us, I mean, let us know obviously in the comments. But I feel like that's pretty chalk there for Auburn. Moving into the ACC, a team that I was high on just a year ago, and they beat some teams they should not have beaten last year. They lost some games they should have lost, right? Obviously, but that's the reality of maybe a mid-tier program in the ACC. Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is just a super super explosive team with a ton of playmakers offensively. And obviously, Brent Key does some real good things, which I've liked recently. But the reality of it is you're just going to have opportunities to crush some dreams. That's where this one really comes. That's where I get really excited for Georgia's Tech is because you're playing Florida State, you're playing Notre Dame, you're playing Va Tech, who people like in the ACC, you're playing Miami, you're playing NC State, and you finish the year with Georgia. Now, first of all, that's a gauntlet. We've talked about Georgia Tech. If you go check their schedule out, we did a video on that.
It's nuts.
It's yeah, this is about as tough as it gets, and obviously supplement that was at Syracuse, at North Carolina, Duke, whatever you want to say that. But Florida State, by the way, is in Dublin. What did you guys realize that a week zero game? We could have an awesome matchup in week zero, first time in a long time. And then obviously, I didn't even mention Louisville. Louisville won 10 games just a year ago. They're on the schedule as well. Notre Dame is at home. I believe that's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is not at necessarily Bobby Dodd, but it's also in Atlanta there. You'll have a huge home field advantage. And Chick-fil-A will be open in that stadium, which is pretty dope for our Atlanta fans. Yeah. What say you, Matthew?
You know what tough schedule translates to? Lots of opportunity to bust the bubble of some playoff contending teams.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, you're going to get to November, and maybe you're not going to have the record you think you are that reflects your team. And what's the number one rule in college football? Is that your
Your
record is pretty
record
misleading.
is, yeah, you're not what your record says you are.
Exactly. And so if you're NC State, if you're Miami, who's famous for choking games, losing games you shouldn't, if you're Georgia, even, right, you're going to have a massive talent gap in those games. But here's Georgia Tech. Here's Brent Key looking to burst your bubble.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Anything else to add for us?
Not really. I think you kind of nailed it. I mean, just Haynes King at quarterback feels like he could just win a game on accident.
Or lose a game?
They should have, well, yeah, or lose a game. Like, yeah, yeah. But that's the ebbs and flows of being a playoff buster. You know, it's like you're gonna drop one to Bowling Green, and then all of a sudden you're gonna come out and beat Miami. That's what you're gonna do. You know.
And they got some real pieces. I love Eric Singleton. And now, obviously, he had some games he wishes he would have had back a year ago, but he was just a freshman. And he really started putting it together. And yeah, to me, this is just a dangerous football team. Moving on, heading to the Big Ten now. We have Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin in year two, Luke Fickell, a lot of expectations. But we also talked about them and how tough their schedule is. But what did we say about Georgia Tech? Lots of opportunities to do some real damage. And unlike Georgia Tech, maybe unlike, our first team in Auburn, they got some games at home that they can do some real damage to playoff contenders. I'm looking at Alabama in week 2. I'm looking at Penn State in late October. I'm looking at the middle of November with Oregon, all coming to Camp Randall. That is terrifying. They have to be terrifying. This is on their schedule. They understand exactly what it's like to go in to Wisconsin and to play a well-coached, talented football team. It is not easy to come out with a win there. What say you?
Yeah, and like, look, as an Alabama fan, sure, you might not be scared of Tyler Van Dyke. Okay. But if you're an Oregon fan, it's not Tyler Van Dyke that you should be afraid of. It's going to Madison in the month of November. That's what you should be afraid of when that temperature drops. And all of a sudden, is that a night game? Yeah, we don't know what time it is. I hope it's a night game. Probably won't be. But I hope it's a night game. And all of a
Well,
sudden, the Oregon
as long
Ducks,
as
they're shivering, and you have Wisconsin just pounding the ball like they do in the Big Ten with just some meaty, big boy, cornbread fed white mama boys at the offensive line there. Yeah, sure. Like, they could be more talented on the offensive side of the ball at receiver. Like, I would expect Luke Fickell and Phil Longo there to, hopefully improve that aspect of that team. But if you're looking at the identity of Wisconsin in the past and what they have been in the month of November, even against Minnesota, I mean, they pounded the rock. They
yeah,
pounded the rock late.
you couldn't tackle Braylon Allen. Now, yes, he's gone to the NFL, but Ches Malucci, when he's healthy, he's
Who
unbelievable.
is
Tyree
very
Walker, a
good.
guy from Oklahoma, comes in. Jackson Aker, a guy that had success last year for Wisconsin. I love it.
Yeah. So I mean, it'll really come down to Tyler Van Dyke. Like, how good is Tyler Van Dyke? Can he be a dude? But guess what? We've seen it before. Alabama has lost to plenty of worse quarterbacks under the Nick Saban era, by the way. Actually, I can mention two worse quarterbacks probably. Well,
I
you think Steven Garcia is better than Tyler Van Dyke?
he was 20-14. He had 47 touchdowns and 41 interceptions in his career. Now,
So
yes,
we
Tyler Van
think
Dyke has a lot of interceptions, but no, no. I think Tyler Van Dyke's significantly more talented. I, yeah, I do not.
Nick Marshall. Obviously, he's better than Zach
I,
Calzada, right?
I
So
don't know how much better Bo Wallace is than
Bo Wallace had the it factor though.
does Tyler Van Dyke. To me, Tyler
Well,
Van
he
Dyke,
did. He did in week 2 of last year. I'll tell you that.
yeah, in 2 years as true freshman, right? We saw it. We saw him play really, really good football.
And
He
Alabama's
changed his
losing their
scenery.
entire
Nice.
secondary. Alabama's losing their entire secondary. Like, just don't give Tyler Van Dyke easy reads. All right, don't do it. Don't do it.
That's up to Phil Longo. I mean, if it was to be if you combine Hugh Freeze with Tyler Van Dyke, and
Why
that would
was
be
he not at Auburn?
to me, it's pretty telling that they did not go after many wide receivers in the portal. They took a guy from Michigan State who's probably going to be a reserve for them.
Will Pauling? Question
To
mark?
Will Pauling, Bryson Green, C.J. Williams. To me, there's some talent in that room. I think they believe in, and obviously you believe you can get the best out of Tyler Van Dyke. To me,
Yeah.
and that's why I like Wisconsin to be in this position is because home games, and yes, you mentioned the physicality, especially in that late October game and that November game, but also to me the explosiveness factor potential is there to do some damage, to do what it takes to beat Alabama, to do what it takes to beat Penn State, to do what it takes to beat Oregon. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else for Wisconsin?
I'm checked out.
All right. Now we're going back to the ACC, and we've got Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, very interesting team here. So
And here's
now
the
I'll let you
thing.
get into it.
I put this team on here. All right. And it's not like Wisconsin or Auburn or Georgia Tech even, where those schools have multitudes of opportunities, right? Now Wisconsin less so than Georgia Tech and Auburn, but Virginia Tech has one unique opportunity that I'm circling on
Circled
this.
right
I mean, it
there.
is a gigantic circle on this schedule. I'm looking at it on my screen over here to the left. Oh, is that? Did they get Clemson at home? Well, what do you know? Virginia Tech gets Clemson at home. They also play Miami, right, at Miami, but we know that that's not actually home field advantage, right? So who cares? So basically, neutral site game when you're going to Hard Rock and Clemson, you get at home. Those are two potential playoff teams. I think Virginia Tech is potentially a bubble burster. Now, what do we talk about bubble bursters as well? Like they could be a, dare I say, bid stealer? Dare I say, bid stealer in this league. Now they were like what 1 or 2 games away from making the ACC tournament or championship last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When I look
No,
at when I look at
In November, they had a chance to win.
when I look at this schedule is even more manageable than last year's schedule. Even more manageable. Your two ranked opponents, right, are Miami and Clemson. How good is Georgia Tech? You don't know, but you get them at home. How good is Boston College? You don't know, but you get them at home. Syracuse, kind of tough going to the Carrier Dome there. Then you get Duke, head coaching turnover. Virginia, you get at home. Like, this is as good as it gets probably in the ACC in terms of schedules. When I look at a potential bid stealer, and I'm looking at a team right now, I don't know what their odds are to win the ACC right now, but Virginia Tech might not be a bad play if you're a gambling man.
No, and they return a ton of production, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they're still 12th as well, but they're first offensively and first in overall returning production. Kyron Drones is back. You get Lane and Felton. I like the duo there. You get Tutton behind you as well. Yeah, to me, I just love. I cannot wait to see Enter Sandman. It better be a night game. ACC, don't mess this up. Clemson going in to Blacksburg. That yeah, and like you mentioned, their schedule it could set up to where that is a really meaningful game for both sides. Now, for both sides now. What are you looking at right now?
I'm looking at the odds right now. I'm looking at Virginia Tech is plus 2,000. Is this an Oklahoma State situation from last year?
To win the ACC, they're plus 2,000.
Plus 2,000 behind SMU, behind Louisville, behind NC State, which I guess I understand, and right next to North Carolina.
That North Carolina's a waste of money. Okay, we all know
Waste of
that.
money.
But yeah, to me,
But the other,
you
oh
got
man,
SMU. The thing is you're gonna have to beat Clemson. Like you're gonna have to beat. But
I know.
also, that's what this
But
whole video is
that's what
about.
that's
This
what
whole
the
video is
whole
about.
that's what it's all about. And plus, remember last year, like it was like it's gonna come down to Oklahoma beating Oklahoma for when I was taking Oklahoma at 30-1, 40-1, whatever it was. It was gonna come down to that Oklahoma game. I said it, but the thing was they get him at home, right? In Blacksburg. This Virginia Tech team, when you have a player as exciting as Kyron Jones, like seats stands are gonna be filled. Blacksburg might be bumping like we haven't seen it in the last 6 or 7 years.
By the way, and Brent Pry guy that we're really rooting for. We like him as well on this program. You don't think he doesn't know that this game means something? Clemson.
Oh,
He was just talking to
oh,
just talking to Josh Pate. He just said this place, meaning Virginia Tech, Blacksburg. This place was Clemson before Clemson was Clemson. Are you telling me that he is not fired up for this game and fired up to bring Blacksburg, to bring Virginia Tech back to promise, where they were really, really good in the ACC in the peak there? So to me, I just love this. I'm glad you put him on here because I didn't think about it. Just because I was like, I looked at one
yeah,
glance at the schedule, I was like, Clemson. Okay, everybody else. But the reality of it is that that's going to be a massive game if things play out like we think it
yeah.
will.
And look, they don't play Florida State on this schedule, but you know, what if early December, that ACC championship game, what if that's them playing Florida State? What if that's for the ACC bid?
Again, bid stealer, and yeah. If you, by the way, ACC is probably a one bid league here, maybe two
I could have
if
two potentially
yeah
if things
they're gonna
work
have
out.
yeah if Hot Tech beats an undefeated Florida State, that's probably what it's gonna come down to, and so we'll see. But
But will Florida State be undefeated? I say no. But that's a different conversation for a different day. But I like this the idea of a bid stealer, right? A bubble burster who's getting knocked out, right? Also, too, like that means like if they get in, right? If they vault in there, when they normally wouldn't have, what SEC team or Big Ten team gets booted out? You know, like that's real implications. Like that's bubble bursting right there, if I've ever seen it.
massive DMA, yeah, you have to have November 9th circled on your calendar. That is, I mean, please be a night game so we can really get what it's like. I mean, that is on my bucket list of places to be at. It's Virginia Tech in a meaningful game, and they haven't seen many in recent years. Let's be honest about Virginia Tech.
Which every game for Virginia Tech is meaningful.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry, yes, but I'm talking about bubble bursting type meaningful. Are you got anything else to add here for Vatek?
Not really. I was gonna try to find their odds, to like on a different book potentially to win the ACC. Obviously, like you shouldn't bet this now, okay? But it's something to look out for. Like if some teams in the ACC, all of a sudden there's some portal exodus. If Clemson continues to just not make moves in the portal, you know, uh, all of a sudden there's a quarterback injury, and then you see, oh no, uh, Georgia Tech, Haynes King, leg injury, you know, or early in the season you play Miami. Oh no, Cam Ward's got an injury. He's going to be out the first 6 weeks. Then holy cow, I would absolutely pound Virginia Tech plus 20,000 or plus 2,000. That would be nuts. I don't know. Just give me like 30 seconds to find these odds to see if it's different.
Yeah, I'll talk about
Um,
some pieces they got coming in. I mean, I to me
Okay,
like
it's
this
plus
is
1,800. So the best you can get is plus 2,000
all
right
right,
now.
which is still pretty good value and
Don't
great
take it
value.
yet. Wait. Hold. Hold.
1-800 gambler. No, but Anais Pebbles is a guy that comes in a Peebles. I don't
Yep.
know exactly how to say it, but he is a stud on the D line there. To me, criminally underrated in the transfer portal. 24/7 has him as a 3-star transfer. To me, he's much, much higher than that. And I think he's going to be an impact player for them. That
Yeah,
was a
I
big
like that
game.
take. I like that take. Plus, like the linebacking cores, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad.
No, 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 no. We're moving on to our last team here. We're talking about the USF Bulls, the South
Yeah.
Florida Bulls, Alex Golish. To me, they're just a dangerous team. And we talked about it with Virginia Tech, where there was one game circled. And to me, do they have a better chance of beating Alabama than Vodtech is beating Clemson? No, no. But also, this is Alabama right before Wisconsin game, right? This is a brand new Alabama staff and team. There's a lot of turnover there, especially defensively, where Alex Golish and Byron Brown and some guys there can have a ton of success. I do not think it is out of the realm of possibilities that USF gives them hell. They gave them hell last year. And yes, that was the Tyler Buckner game. It was wild circumstances, bad weather, yada, yada, yada. But I don't think there's a ton of crazy out of the realm of possibility that USF gets significantly better than they were last year and Bama takes a step back, right? And you also have a home game against Miami, Florida. Another one. And then to top that off, we're talking about bid stealers here. We're talking about bubble bursters. That means the American, with the way the playoff format is, the American is a chance with a conference that is going to have some teams looking for that highest group of 5 team, right? And then you're looking at Memphis, you're looking at Tulane. To me, those are 2 teams that USF is playing that has a real chance to burst their bubbles and to ruin the Americans' chance at getting that first top bid. What say you?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely for all the reasons that you said. I mean, they're what 17th in returning production in the country, fourth offensively. Hey, remember that guy on offense that was really significant to this team last year that left and won't be playing for them next year? Oh wait, they're all there. And Alex Gold, dude, so good last year. So good. I know it was just his first year. It's really, really easy to get overexcited about something like that. Gosh. Yeah, and let's forget about the bowl game with Syracuse because that was a joke of a game. All right, let's be real. Like that was not an accurate representation of what Syracuse was. But if you take the body of work itself from USF offensively, they were really, really good, really effective. And that's what you get. Like a team that is explosive on offense can just burst bubbles, man. They can just burst bubbles. I mean, look what I mean. I would classify Memphis too, but I don't think Memphis plays anyone of bubble significance that I can think of off the top of my head. But Memphis would be another one of those teams that like offensively they're so good. It's like they can win any game. You know, you saw hence the Iowa State game last year. Right? Was it they won that game, right? Pretty
Yeah,
handily
yeah, yeah.
from what I remember. Even though Rocco Beck played his absolute nuts off. Just wasn't enough for Seth Hennigan and Blake Watson and the boys, but uh oh, Memphis actually plays Florida State. That's interesting. It's really interesting. So, but yeah, that's all I got for that.
Yeah, I mean they fit this definition absolutely. You mentioned how like explosive they are offensively. Maybe because of limitations in other places in their roster that the conference title is not realistic for them to compete for in year 2 of Alex Golish. But we're talking about Dreambusters here. They don't have to win the conference, but they could give the top teams a run for their money. And the Alabama, Miami, Tulane, Memphis, which by the way they play 4 and 5 weeks. You gotta believe they're gonna win one of those games and really throw some things for the committee off and obviously shake some things up, come selection Sunday, whenever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to find future odds for AAC. Uh nope, nothing for
I,
USF.
th- I think they're
I
waiting.
wouldn't waste your time betting on that, but um definitely a team to watch out for, dude. I agree. I like the fact that you put them on here, and I know it's really easy to say like, oh, USF, they played Bama tough last year. But they playing tough again this year? I do not, as a show, let's be clear, we do not anticipate USF beating Alabama the
No,
same way I anticipate Virginia Tech beating Clemson. All right. It's not the same. Those two are not equal. But like for every reason that you said, this team could still be a bubble burster. Absolutely. Yeah, that's it. That's all we got for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for our most improved, least improved, and bubble dream crushers. Thank you guys so much. We're gonna have some more NFL draft stuff, I believe, coming out Thursday. So make sure you guys are staying tuned for that. We're gonna have even more NFL draft stuff as we get closer. It's April. It is NFL draft month. So make sure you guys are tuned in for that. If you like this content, make sure you like the video, right? And if you like NFL draft content, we'll be here for that as well. We're not professional scouts, but we love talking ball. We love talking ball. So we'll be here for that. Make sure you guys consider subscribing as well. Just hit the bell too. If you want to make sure you don't miss a video. Keith Brown, loyal subscriber, Nebraska fan. I believe I actually ran into him while I was getting my hair cut. And he literally, like, this was like 2 hours after we posted our video from our last mock draft. And he's already talking about how he disagrees with those picks. I love
which we
that.
love.
I
We
love that
love.
mentality. Everyone would be like Keith Brown. All right, everyone would be like Keith Brown. So thank you guys so much. CD, anything from you, dude?
Yeah, just like just like Keith did, Mr. Brown. Let us know in the comments where we went wrong, where we went right, everything else. Obviously, future videos, ideas, people we want to talk about. We love hearing from you guys, and we'll be sure to get to those as well.
Awesome. And we'll see y'all in the next one.